Let's take a look at the far-right riots that we've seen across England and Northern Ireland over the last week or so, and how social media platforms like X have played a key role in terms of promoting misinformation that has then spilled over into real-world violence. It's important that we don't let people who've got, quite frankly, sinister agendas divide our communities. But the only way to get rid of the darkness is to turn on the lights, isn't it? So let's take a look at what's been going on. On the 29th of July, 3 little girls were stabbed in Southport when they were attending a Taylor Swift themed dance session during the summer holidays. Following that, a 17-year-old was arrested and subsequently charged with murder and attempted murder. What followed that was some of the worst riots that the UK has seen in over a decade. It was fueled by misinformation on social media, particularly on platforms like X, and it led to riots in around 20 major cities in England and also in Northern Ireland, which was targeted at migrants and Muslims. We saw petrol bombs being thrown at the police, we saw looting, we saw mosques targeted, and we saw individuals targeted as well. Now, the response from communities was also fast. We saw lots of anti-racism demonstrations organised in response.
The country, a response to violent clashes and rioting in the aftermath of the Southport stabbings. The killings have ignited fierce debate about race and immigration, fueled in part by rumours spread on social media in the aftermath of the tragedy.
So, following those events, almost 1,000 arrests have been made since the disorder broke out, and more than 500 people have been charged, some of them receiving sentences as long as 32 months. And there's also been reports that some as young as 12 have been charged in relation to the disorder as well. So there's no doubt that social media has played a key role in literally fueling real world violence through misinformation. So if we just have a look at where all of this started, this is the original tweet from an account called Channel 3 Now, and it says a 17-year-old called Ali Al-Shakati has been arrested in relation to the stabbings. He was on an MI6 watch list, and he was an asylum seeker who came to UK by boat last year. Load of crap. All of it, complete load of crap. He was born in Wales to parents who were from Rwanda, but that didn't stop this going absolutely viral. And then that sort of atmosphere of misinformation was amplified by key figures like Nigel Farage. Let's have a look at what he had to say just after the attacks in Southport.
Our country, I have to say there are one or two questions. Was this guy being monitored by the security services? Some reports say he was.
Well, not some reports. There's that one tweet from that account which we know was absolutely false.
Others less sure. The police say it's a non-terror incident, just as they said the stabbing of an Army Lieutenant Colonel in uniform on the streets of Kent the other day was a non-terror incident. I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't.
So he's just wondering if the truth is being withheld. What, by the police? Really trying to fan the flames and insinuate that the real story or the real information is being kept from people, where somebody in his position should have really had enough about him to double check what was going on. So let's just take a quick look at how fast misinformation can spread on social media. So we can see here that less than 24 hours after the attack, the false name got 30,000 mentions, over 30,000 mentions. It was amplified by other far-right accounts, and then it was also amplified by X's algorithm as well. So it was soon recommended as a top search result. So that information was allowed to stay up on the platform. So it's easy to see how false information has spread like wildfire. Now, X isn't the only issue. There's another platform called Telegram. Now, Telegram has got a channel that had 15,000 members on that, and it was used to actually organise these riots and also spread other quite disturbing information. So, things like instructions about how to build a petrol bomb, as well as organising these riots in different places as well. So it's no wonder, is it, that what we've seen since these riots took place is calls for more regulation in terms of social media, because it's just an absolute free-for-all for disinformation at the moment. And what we've seen with the Southport situation basically is a direct connection between misinformation on social media and real world violence. And there's so many examples of this, but this is quite a disturbing video. But if you just look at what the consequences of this stuff actually are.
You Muslim terrorist bastard! You Muslim terrorist bastard! You Muslim bastard! You get off the bus! You get off the bus, big man! You get off the bus! 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 You son! You terrorist bastard! You Muslim bastard! You Muslim bastard!
So this is just vile, and it's directly linked to all of this misinformation that we're seeing spread across social media. It's not just social media, it's got to be said. There's been a drip feed of hate from the UK tabloids now for a really long time. Let's just take a look at some of the types of front pages that we've just seen consistently just anti-Muslim propaganda, basically. So there's a need for the tabloids to be accountable. There's a need for politicians to be accountable. We've had no end of dog whistle politics from the Tories with their stop the boat slogans and taglines. And do you remember Labour's controls on immigration mug? So there's been plenty of this stuff going on, and broadcasters as well. Somebody described Nigel Farage as having a season ticket to Question Time. So a lot of these views have been over-platformed, and they've been drip-fed into our communities bit by bit for a very, very long time. So this has been about really exploiting people's fears. That people do have concerns about immigration. I knock doors, I speak to people. They want to have a conversation about some of these issues. But when you scratch the surface, a lot of the real concerns that people have are about being left behind. They're about access to services. They're about not having the same opportunities that were easily accessible to people just a couple of generations ago. You'd be able to get a good job that would buy you a house for a reasonable price. People had a good level of disposable income, for instance. That has vanished for most people. You know, most people now can't get access to genuinely affordable housing to rent or buy. We're seeing off the scale waiting lists in terms of our NHS. We're seeing public services under strain like we've never seen before. So people have genuine frustrations. The problem is a lot of these far right accounts and platforms want you to blame the wrong people. They want you to blame people with brown skin. And if not them, they want you to blame people who are poorer than you are. It's the whole benefit scrounger narrative, isn't it? But the one thing that they don't want you to do is to look at where the real blame lies. The right are just trying to distract people from those who have really ripped people off, ripped our communities off. So, you know, the super rich who pay their taxes but then hide their wealth in offshore accounts. It's the water bosses who were rewarded for pumping shit into our rivers and our seas. It's the Tory buddies who made millions from the PPE scandal. So, of course, they don't want to focus on these people for obvious reasons. So they're trying the tactics of divide and rule instead. Well, don't let them get away with this. As we've seen, it's a minefield on social media in terms of making sure that the information that we're sharing is accurate. But there are a few things that we can do to try and safeguard from some of this misinformation. So check sources. Is it a credible source that you're retweeting or you're sharing on Facebook? If you're not sure, go outside of the app and check online, check separately whether the source is credible or isn't credible. We need to work on community engagement. So we need to work to engage with marginalised groups, particularly at the moment. But we also need to have an open and honest conversation generally within our communities about issues like immigration. It can't be taboo. If people have got concerns, there has to be a forum to have those discussions. Now, most people don't support the far-right thuggery that we've seen over the last week or so. There are polls that show us that people just do not support it. But what we've also seen is a company like Reform get 14% of the vote in the last UK general election. Now, that is telling us that at the moment, the far right are filling a vacuum, and we need to make sure that other more moderate voices are in that conversation. We also need politicians to commit to addressing some of the underlying causes that are causing frustration in our community. So addressing things like the wealth inequality that we see right across the UK, addressing poverty levels, addressing the fact that so many of our public services are on their knees at the moment. We've got a crisis across the board. So is it any wonder that people are frustrated? And that creates a vacuum where the far right can come in and lever people's frustrations to their own agenda. So it's vital that we all stand against these attempts to deceive people, quite frankly, in order to get people to toe the line because of specific agendas. So we need to offer people a positive alternative, and we also need to call out disinformation whenever we see it.